This is Football League Radio, brought to you by TradePoint.
Back in the Premier League after 4 years, Burnley's Sean Dyche tells us how he did it. Leicester are confirmed as champions of the Championship, and we celebrate with one of their most vocal fans, the Kasabian frontman and lifelong Fox, Tom Meehan. They're down but not out. Stevenage manager Graham Westley explains why relegation can be a good thing at times. Still clinging on to life in League One, Notts County boss Sean Derry. He talks us through his first season in charge. And the former Portsmouth manager and now current Crawley Town assistant, Guy Whittingham. He takes on our quickfire quiz. Tackle these.
On radio, online and on mobile. This is Football League Radio.
Welcome to Football League Radio with me, Matt Holland, and I'm delighted to say that joining me in the studio is the former Bradford City, West Brom, Sunderland, Barnsley, Walsall, Exeter, Doncaster and Wolves striker Don Goodman. Welcome along, Dom.
Hi, Matt. Have you got your breath back after all that mouthful, haven't you?
Just about. How many clubs is that?
Well, you forgot my Sanfrecce Hiroshima in Japan, but I will forgive you for that. So,
Okay.
I think 10 in all, a couple of loan deals, but 10 in all, most of which were after my 30s.
Big apologies for missing those out. You were at Orient to watch Wolves win 3-1 and win the Championship. Magnificent achievement.
Yeah, and very important that a club of that stature would bounce back at the first attempt. And Kenny Jackett was handed a mission last summer, and he's done it magnificently well, I have to say, because we've got to remember that there were lots and lots of big players, big wage earners that had been there from the Premier League that Kenny didn't particularly need or want to be utilising. He knew what he wanted. He wanted a young, vibrant, energetic team to take the club forward, and he had to deal with all the politics of getting players out on loan and keeping players in the background, etc., etc. And he has done it fantastically well.
Yeah, you talk about that young element. He's had, on average, 8 homegrown players in their match day squad this entire season. That's something special, isn't it?
It's fantastic, and Wolves is a club that has notoriously produced a reasonable amount of homegrown players throughout the years. So he's walked into. There's an excellent academy there, very well set up. In fact, it's one of the elite ones. So that's how good it is. It mixes it with all the top clubs, and it's well run and well set up, and it's producing. And you have to say though, you'll know as well as I do, it's okay bringing academy players through, but getting them into a first team situation, that takes an awful lot of work on the training ground and good coaching, and that is Kenny Jackett's strength, isn't it? His coaching abilities and his organisational abilities are fantastic.
We know what it's like, Don, as well. Supporters love one of their own coming through and getting into the first team.
They do, and it was particularly important this season because it has been a horrific couple of seasons, obviously relegated from the Premier League and then the Championship. Fans almost turning against the club, turning against players, turning against the board, turning against the managers that were in place, etc., etc. I think they just were in a place where they'd had enough. They didn't think that Wolves should be, with the resources, with the history, etc., although history counts for nothing, getting relegated not once but twice. I think getting relegated from the Premier League, well, there's no shame in that. It's a fantastically difficult league to maintain your status unless you're in that top sort of 7 or 8 elite clubs. But getting relegated from the Championship, I mean, that was a real shock and something that they need to bounce back from. So bringing all these young players through, you're right, Matt. When we were youngsters growing up at the first club and being homegrown, you got all the encouragement in the world, didn't you? It was almost like supporters will cut you that extra little bit of slack. And, Wolves have definitely benefited from that because the start of the season and the first 3, 4, 5 months of the season, it wasn't particularly fluent. It wasn't pleasing on the eye. It wasn't the kind of football that Kenny Jackett was after. But what they did do was they ground results out. They were very, very resilient defensively. I mean, they've only conceded 30 goals in 44 games. I mean, that is truly amazing. But in the beginning part of the season, it was that defence that got them through, that organisation, when they weren't playing particularly well. But I don't think anybody will doubt, from January onwards, some of the football has been excellent, and they've been by far and away, ultimately over the 44 games so far, the best team in the league.
Well, we had Matt Murray on last week and he talked about that great defensive record, but it went out the window somewhat in that game against Rotherham, didn't it?
Well, it did really, yeah. I mean, I just think they were teasing everybody all along, Matt, really. They wanted to entertain their fans, 31,000 inside Molineux, and crazy game because they went behind in that game and then got themselves 3-1 and 4-2 ahead, and then pegged back to 4-4 as the sort of 90 minutes were up, and then found a couple of goals in in the added time. So thoroughly entertaining game. I'm not sure Kenny would have been pleased with the defensive side of things, but at the end of the day, the job has been done now.
I remember once playing for Bournemouth. We went to Peterborough and won 5-4, never 6-4. What about you?
I've been in a 6-5er, Matt, when I played for Motherwell.
Wow.
Up in the Scottish Premier League.
Scottish keepers.
Well, listen, I'm going to tell you the two keepers, and you're going to take that right back. It was Andy
I'm only
Gorham.
joking.
I know. Andy Gorham and Jim Leighton were the two goalkeepers. And I'll tell you what, Matt, it was one of those games where they were the best two players on the pitch. It could have been 15-all. It really was one of those games. So Aberdeen came to Motherwell, and they hadn't won a single Scottish Premier League game all season, and it was sort of late October. And they're going to beat somebody sometime, aren't they? And they managed to beat Motherwell. They managed to beat us 6-5 at Fir Park. So not a game I'll forget.
And you talk about the turnaround in the support from the fans. 31,000 at that game against Rotherham. That is something special. Their biggest gate since 1981.
Yeah, phenomenal. And I think obviously Steve Morgan, the owner, got a lot of criticism for extending the stadium. They have built the most magnificent new stand behind one of the goals, and of course it was all occurring while they were getting relegated from the Premier League and obviously relegated again from the Championship. So they were never anywhere near filling it really during those difficult days of the last couple of seasons. But for a League One game to fill a ground like that and get 31,000, hopefully it's the sign of things to come for them. It shows you the fan base, it shows you the support that is there if players are performing and the club's doing well on the pitch. There's no doubt it's a wonderful club, lots of history, great fan base. And Matt, you look at some of the clubs that have gone from League One into the Premier League in recent seasons. I can name 4 off the top of my head. Leicester City have not long out of League One, 3 or 4 seasons ago, and they're now Premier League. Swansea City, and more notably where they did the back-to-back promotions were, of course, Southampton and Norwich. So it just shows you that it can be done. 2 or 3 real quality additions, and I would expect Wolverhampton Wanderers to be certainly in the top half and maybe challenging for a playoff spot at least next season.
Brentford also celebrating promotion into the Championship as well. I suppose it was poetic justice getting promoted with that penalty Alan Judge scored.
Well, yeah, I mean, the penalty was irony, wasn't it? I mean, it's a very similar story to Leicester City in terms of the heartbreak that the whole club must have suffered with the way that they didn't get promoted last season. It shows an awful lot of character and determination and togetherness to get predominantly the same group of players and have a successful season. I've been in members of squads that have lost in playoff semi-finals prior, and I can tell people it is very, very difficult picking yourself up from that disappointment at the start of the following season and getting off to a good start. But certainly Leicester City are to be congratulated, and Brentford, of course, are to be congratulated, because it must have been absolutely heartbreaking what they went through last summer.
That, of course, is the voice of this week's guest, Don Goodman, and there'll be more from Sky Bet League One shortly. But next, Burnley boss Sean Dyche, he talks about the fact that his side will be playing Premier League football next season.
Kick it. TradePoint, come on lads, get the man. TradePoint, one stop, get the lot. TradePoint have thousands of lines behind the counter, so you can get everything you need to get the job done in no time. TradePoint, trade brands, trade prices, trade only. TradePoint!
Jones, nice ball, gets it wide for Kitely. Ball inside from Kitely, looking for Ings. Touched on from Arnie, that's nice. There's Barnes in the middle, looking for him. 1-0 Burnley! Ashley Barnes! His first goal at Turf Moor. And how important could that be on 22 minutes? Just outside the box. Can Burnley deliver here just before half-time? It's going to be Kitely to deliver. Gets it in there. Oh, Michael Kitely! What a free kick! Straight in for the free kick. No chance for Al-Hamsi. Burnley have doubled the advantage. And it's Michael Kitely in fantastic form. What a free kick that is. It's a stunner. 30 seconds away. Amazing. 30 seconds away for Burnley. It's with Dean Marnie. What an inspiration he is. That's the final whistle. Everybody runs for the tunnel. Burnley are promoted back to the Premier League. Would you believe it?
One of the biggest stories from the Sky Bet Football League this season, and now, after beating Wigan at home on Monday, it is official. Sean Dyche and Burnley, they'll be gracing the Premier League next season after clinching promotion. Sean, Congratulations, what an achievement.
Yeah, thanks very much, Matt. It's the whole club deserves credit, but particularly the players. You know what it's like. We obviously, as a staff, have done fantastically well as well, but it always comes down to players delivering performance. Me and you both know that, having been through it, and they've been terrific. And the relentless mentality of them, and I've mentioned it many times, and the ability as well, and the endeavour and the desire, all of them things, put on show every week and bi-weekly when needed to get so far 89 points on the board, which is just a fantastic total already.
You sound like you got your voice back. It was a bit croaky after the game.
Well, I do get involved, like most managers do, but, that's my desired style, is to be involved with the team and how they operate. And, I think it's appropriate to do so. And my voice is always somewhat like this, but obviously it goes up and down. It goes up and down with how gravelly it gets, depending on how much shouting I've been doing.
You've been promoted 4 times as a player. Now as a manager, how does it feel? How does it compare?
I think as a player, it's your individual part of the team. You know that. You've got to focus on yourself to a certain degree because you have to perform. But you are part of a team, and it's just that singular mentality to get your job done and then protect your part of the team to make sure the team works. Whereas a manager, you're overseeing so many things, and modern management, particularly, yourself, as I'm doing now, the media interest is phenomenal now compared to what it was. Even when I was playing at the end of my career, we got promoted at Northampton, and it's kind of not that big a deal in the bigger picture. Whereas now, going into the Premier League, because of the power of the Premier League, the media's been everywhere, the stories have been everywhere, the players have had to see through all that, the noise, I call it, on the outside of what we've been doing, and be focused on what we're actually doing. And I've had to do that as well. So, to come through that as a young manager who's learning, then I've been obviously really pleased with the way I've conducted myself throughout the season, and certainly my staff and the players.
You were 4th favourites to go down at the start of the season. So what has been the secret to that success, do you think?
Well, I said one of the reports was saying that I said there was no secret. I didn't mean... What I mean is that it's good work by all concerned. I have to guide and lead because I'm the manager, but my staff have been terrific. The backing support from the analyst side of things, the sports science side of things, the coaching staff, all of that aligns with the players. The players have been open-minded to accept the good information given. And, we've worked on really all of the details. I think that a season is about the toil in between the games. I think that's the secret, if there is one. And that's demanding of every inch of what you do. We make sure everything is detailed. The warm-ups are detailed. The players demand in a warm-up. We don't let them just warm up for the sake of warming up. Everything we do is to the max, and the way they train. And, we always use the ball, the minimal of any work without the ball. Just good practice, I must say, delivered in the right format. And as I suggest, I think there's a lot out there doing it. So that's what I really meant about no secret. There's loads of good people out there, loads of good English coaches, managers, all working extremely hard and trying to do the right things. And, I always put credit on the players because they're the ones who go out and deliver it.
John, you talk about that attention to detail, and I know you spent time with the Oxford boat race crew while studying for your pro licence, and you were impressed with their dedication and the unity of the group. Has that been important to this team?
Yeah, I think it's not just that, the honesty and the pride in what they do. They're the most professional, non-professional people I've certainly ever witnessed. And them boys are... I do offer it to the players at Burnley when I first went in there, and I didn't over-egg it. I just said, look, I looked at these people. They've got PhDs going on. The Winklevoss brothers were in the boat when I was there. Now, they had the lawsuit going on with Facebook, as well as being PhD students, as well as rowing for, the boat race. So much going on, and yet they put so much effort into it, the honesty, the desire, the pride, all of the old-fashioned traits. But I think they're more modern than ever. Because they're the glue that hold a team together. We think we've got good tactical understanding and organisation. We know we've got talent. We know we can play, and we know we can be effective. But to glue all that together, you need them things. You need the integrity of the group, the pride and the passion, and the discipline and the respect as well. The respect for the staff and the respect of each other. And we've used that as a real glue to make sure that we have the best chance of achieving it.
I'll tell you what you've done as well. You've done it with real financial restraints as well, and a small squad. Sold Charlie Austin in the summer. Danny Ings and Vokes have been absolutely fabulous though for you, haven't they?
Yeah, I don't overthink them things. I'm just a believer in look at what you've got, not what you haven't. You can get bogged down with what you haven't got, and we could all, every manager at every level could question things they haven't got. You've got to be aware of them because you've got to know the realities of your situation, I believe. But I don't overthink them things. I look at what we have got. I look at what the contribution the players can make, the support that we can give them as manager and staff, and put them in a good place. And I always think if you've ticked all the boxes and given the players them boxes ticked, if you like, dietary support, fitness support, injury support, tactical understanding, technical awareness and sharpness, and of course the physical demands, then once they roll out onto that pitch, they know that they're all ready. They know mentally they're ready to deliver a performance. And I just think if you can put them things to bed before you've even started, when the whistle blows, then players are free then to go and play. And they've bought into that, the players here, and that's been a real powerful weapon for us.
It's only your first full season in charge at Burnley, only your third season as a manager in the Football League. You're already affectionately known as the Ginger Mourinho, and you'll be facing him next season.
Yeah, interesting concept. Slightly different clubs, I would say, but no, I mean it's a name tag at the end of the day, and I think it's given out of respect. I don't think there's anything other than that, but it's not something I get too carried away. I've said in a few interviews they weren't all calling me that last year. Let's put it that way. So, it's up and down, the yin and yang of football, the ups and downs, hero to zero, zero to hero, all the rest of it. We have to keep that in check. I certainly do as a manager. I did as a player, and I'm sure you did. My ego's intact. It's not too large. I think it's about appropriate for what I have to do. I'm resilient enough to take the knocks and humble enough to enjoy the good times and take the backslapping. So, I try and keep it on an even keel for myself, and I hope I express that.
So when do you start thinking about the Premier League, or is it already started?
Well, to be honest, softly speaking, we'd spoken about it probably a month ago in the boardroom and said, look, these are the challenges that may present. Obviously, that sort of stuff is kept in-house for the obvious reasons. No one wants to, overanalyze the fact that you've done it, because you haven't. But you have to be aware that if you do it, then you've got to have some kind of planning. So we are aware of the challenges, of course. And as it got closer and closer, you don't want to put anything in the way of it. So you tend to talk less and less about it until it's done. But the one thing for sure, we're not naive. We know the challenges that are straight there right in front of you. But we certainly enjoy the next 2 weeks of the season. As you suggest, I had 4 promotions, and the best ones are when you've got in the last couple of games of the season when you can relax and just play and enjoy the moment. And our lads now have got 2 weeks of enjoying the fact they've been promoted to the Premier League.
You've only spent money on one player since taking over at Burnley. That's Ashley Barnes. Do you anticipate spending a bit more this summer?
Yeah, maybe 2 players. No, I think there's a reality within the future for the club and what the Premier League beholds. Of course, we have to finance some way possible. I think there will be some good players possibly available out of contract, but we can't rely on that. We know that. And there will have to be investment. We will be talking over the next couple of weeks with the board, or I will be talking with the board about what the realities are. We have to safeguard the future of the club. Last time round, it probably wasn't, the finance wasn't dealt with as well as maybe it could have been. So I think they've learned from that. Obviously, we want to be competitive. That stands to reason. We think we can be, but we just know as a club we can't throw endless amounts of money at it, because that the heaven and hell of the Premiership can affect clubs radically the wrong way if it's not dealt with wisely.
Do you get nervous, excited? How are you feeling going into the Premier League next season?
I think, to be honest, I think there comes a bit of freedom with it. I use that term a lot, but I think there'll be no expectation. I think almost zero expectations from the outside world about what Burnley can offer the Premier League. I don't think there'll be people thinking we can rip it up remotely. I think they'll know that every bookmaker will make us the favourites to go down. Now, the good side of that, it gives that freedom, it gives that underdog spirit and that kind of what-if scenario. As you suggested, we were off this year before the ball was kicked, and without anyone really looking at the players we've got, I felt, and we still feel we've got some good players, but we are aware. I'm certainly aware. I watch the Premier League. I can see the enormous amounts of money being spent and some of the fantastic players that are in there. But you can't be frightened of that. We've got to go in there with an open mind, as we have done this season, play with the energy we've got, play with the organisation, the levels of talent that we have available, and do what we can to secure 3 points on a weekly basis. That mantra's been there all this season, so I don't see why that should change.
Do you hold, say, Crystal Palace as an example for next season? Are they your inspiration, is that what you're going to say to your players? Look what Crystal Palace have achieved this year.
Well, to be honest, I think Tony Pulis has been absolutely amazing. I think what he's done there is nothing short of miraculous. I really do, and I know Tony a little bit, and I totally respect them. The managers like Tony, Steve Bruce the same. I mentioned it the other day. Incredible the jobs that they've done and are doing. I'd certainly, ask them the question. I know them both enough where I could pick up the phone and just say, look, lads, what are your thoughts? it shows that it can be done where you can be competitive. That's for sure. Minimum, you can be competitive. Now, you can't always guarantee a result, but you can be competitive. That's the minimum requirement for us, is to compete on a weekly basis. We made that clear this season, and as I suggest, I'm not sure we go too far away from it, just because we're going into a new division and an even bigger challenge.
So do you think Tony Pulis has picked you for manager of the season?
Oh God, who knows?
Don't answer that. Don't answer that.
Groups, yeah. I mean, I'm more interested in the fact that we've done a marvellous job, and we take that forward into the last 2 games of the season. We want to go hard in them games. We want to get as many points on the table as possible. We've had loads of fantastic historical markers for a club like ours with such a rich history. So we want the players to get as many points on the board now and make it an even bigger record achievement for the club.
No chance you taking it easy against my old club Ipswich then at the weekend?
No, to be fair to the lads, one of the mantras has been going hard. Every time there was a blows, we're ready to go hard. So I don't see why that should change. Obviously, there's a slight mindset difference. There will be that, release of pressure and tension from the players, because they all knew what it was about the last 2 or 3 games. They know what was on it and the enormity of it. But as you well know, that sometimes brings even more freedom and relaxation to go and play. So we're obviously looking for that to continue with the high levels of performance we've shown all season. Have
you had a highlight of this season? And has there been a key moment where you felt it's turned in your favour?
I mean, people were saying to me, one thing I believe in, and I mean it authentically, was people were saying to me about, the business end of the season. And I reminded them all, I said, well, the business end of the season is every game. And I said, if you look at the beginning of the season, we won 10 out of the first 13. So that's the business end of the season, because that was the start that gave us the platform to build on. Without that start, we wouldn't have achieved what we had. So I just think every game is massive. I think every game's important, and I think every detail within a game is increasing. You see every week in the Premier League, the tiniest detail can change a game. So to define it to one is almost an impossibility. But the biggest game recently, and I personally felt mentally that we'd done it, was when we beat Blackpool. That was the biggest game recently, because I thought that was a really hard game. There was a lot of craziness going on there off the pitch. They were leaving the players alone, getting onto the board and the ownership, and that can play tricks with how the game feels. And I thought we delivered a really solid professional performance to get the 3 points there. Once we got that, internally, I never said anything, but internally I thought, that's it, we've done it.
Sean, really appreciate you joining us.
Fantastic. No, I appreciate it.
Well, that was the Burnley boss, Sean Dyche. I've got Don Goodman in the studio. Donny, extremely humble on his achievements there. He didn't want to blow his own trumpet. I'll let you do that. How good has he been this season?
You can't understate it. You really, really can't. Look at the teams that he's surrounded by at the top there. Leicester City, Derby County, Queen's Park Rangers, Wigan, Reading, Brighton, Nottingham Forest, Ipswich, Blackburn. I mean, crikey, have all of those clubs played in the Premier League? I think they all probably have, except Brighton in the recent era. So, it is a massive, massive, massive achievement, and done on a budget that is way down the pecking order as far as Championship is concerned, and he should be congratulated. He's a nice, likeable man. He's very, very humble about his achievements, and I think the whole of football is absolutely thrilled for him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's been a brilliant effort by Burnley, and joining them in the Premier League next season, of course, are Leicester, whose 1-0 victory over Bolton this week brought them the Championship title. And shouting louder than most, no doubt, will have been Foxes fan and Kasabian frontman Tom Meehan, who spoke about his love of the club recently, starting with his first game he attended as a fan.
It was Port Vale at home, and it was a Zenith Data Cup, and it was horrible. I was bored out of my mind, and I was about 7 years old, and I think we won 4-0. My dad took me as a young boy, and the older I got, I understood football a lot more.
All-time favourite player, and why?
I have to say Steve Walsh, because he was like a rock, just a massive, massive inspiration to the whole team when he was playing. He was solid, he was a leader. I got to know him, and he's a lovely guy.
Current player to watch?
Drinkwater.
Why?
Incredible. I just think he's a fantastic midfielder.
He scores goals?
Scores goals, and we've been missing a midfielder like him, well, for a long time, so I think it's fantastic.
Highlight in your time of supporting Leicester City?
Listen, I'm going to go Wembley, Derby County 2-1. I like the Palace. The Palace was incredible. I don't know what was better, I don't know, but I had to go on Wembley against Derby County. One of the greatest games I've ever seen was at Filbert when we drew 3-0 with Arsenal. That was fantastic. That was pretty good.
What do you remember about that game?
Just ecstasy, and Arsene Wenger moaning as usual, and Walsh again equalised, and he had a scuffle in the tunnel with Ian Wright. Yeah, Bergkamp put them 2 up, and then I think Matt Elliott scored, Heskey scored, and then Bergkamp scored again in the 90th minute, and all the Arsenal fans were giving it loads, and then honestly, Gary Parker took a corner. I think Pryor hit it back across the goal and just left him on mark, bang. And Seaman just flopped in his net, so there you go, 3-3. Low light, man, it had to be getting relegated at Stoke while I was there with my dad and Moz and Tom Bradshaw, who's known as Turnip or Braddy, stood behind that goal. It was raining, it was miserable, it was cold, just a horrible, horrible day. It was very, very sad. To actually drop down to the third tier was very sad. I think we were one of the only teams that never got relegated to the third tier. There's only 7 teams left that never been relegated. I think Tottenham, Everton, Liverpool have never been dropped, and we did it, and it was just a real bad time. Poor Ian Holloway, he couldn't do anything about it. He got a lot of blame, he's a lovely guy, he got a lot of blame for it, so it was horrific. It felt like going to a funeral. That's how bad it was. Watching your team die in front of you is horrendous.
Give us a chant.
Who are we? Blue Army.
Surely you're a singer, you can do better than that.
That's terrible. Now I've got to do the monotone of Leicester, so.
The other members of the band, do they support Leicester?
Funny enough, Chris Edwards, a bass player, for some reason supports Leeds. You've got to ask him why. He can tell you and describe it. Sergio's a Leicester City fan.
How do you keep in touch with Leicester when you're away?
It's pretty easy now, isn't it? I've got like a satellite link up, so I watch the games if I can, which is great.
How do you think the season's gone?
This season, Jeff, I think we've been absolutely outstanding. We keep winning at home and away. The thing is, my dad said if you win your own games, you'll win the league. Away games are bonuses, but we keep winning away, which is brilliant. We've never kind of got this momentum ever before for years. I think it was the 70s last time we did something like this.
Would you swap rock and roll to be a Leicester City player?
Do you know what? I wouldn't, because I'm sure the thrill is amazing, but they can't get away with what I do, and I can't get away with what they do. So there you go.
What do you get away with?
Lots of things. But I suppose being a footballer, you got to be disciplined, And I'm that kind of discipline. I'm disciplined, but not that disciplined,
Well, that was the Kasabian frontman and big Leicester fan, Tom Meehan. Don, we know that Derby and Queen's Park Rangers confirmed in the playoffs. Who do you think is going to join them?
Oh, Matt, that is just a difficult one, isn't it, really? Because literally within the last week, and I know it's Easter week, where they've probably all played 3 games, that Reading have had it in their hands, and of course it's back in their hands after last night's victory at home to Middlesbrough. Brighton have had it in their hands. Ipswich have had it in their hands. But between them, they all seem to be conspiring to let the other clubs in. And now you look down at 10th placed Blackburn Rovers, don't you? Who literally 64 points. They're only 3 points off Reading in 6th place. So it's really, really tight and almost impossible to say. You thought Nottingham Forest were out, of course, and then they have just gone and had back-to-back wins, and the other clubs slipping up have allowed Forest back in. So I'd hate to call it. It's a very, very difficult one. I'm down at Brighton on Friday night for the Oval game, and there's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of tension down there.
I was at a big playoff battle on Monday at Portman Road, and I'll tell you what to say, I was really, really impressed with Eddie Howe and his Bournemouth team. I actually texted him after the game and said, I really enjoyed watching your side play today. They really do knock it about, and I've got to say, they've got some terrific players as well. Lewis Grabban up front looked lively. Matt Ritchie, a decent player. Andrew Sermon in midfield. I thought they were terrific.
Yeah, no, they've been excellent, and there's no doubt about it. They went on that fantastic run, didn't they, where they rattled off win after win after win, and it clawed them up the table to within touching distance. And it's just a shame for them, really, that they've drawn 2 and lost one of the last 3 games, because otherwise they would be right in it. I mean, they're only 4 points off, but obviously now they are relying on 3 or 4 or 5 other clubs to slip up, and you just can't see that happening. But in terms of a story, Burnley's fantastic story this season, but Bournemouth is another fantastic story.
Well, Eddie, of course, the ex-Burnley manager. It just goes to show, though, his positivity as well, doesn't it? Because the game against Sheffield Wednesday at the weekend, it's 2-2, and he's going for the win. And he sacrificed a point, really, to go and get those 3 points.
No, it's excellent, and it's the right attitude and the right mentality to have as far as I'm concerned. And you know what? If they don't make it, and it doesn't look as if they're going to this season, what a platform they've given themselves for next season. And they're going to have teams looking at them and knowing that they could be potentially serious contenders, Bournemouth, I think they've got a little bit of investment now, haven't they, in the background of the club. So if they can add 2 or 3 players to this squad that's going to probably only just miss out on the playoffs, you never know, because Eddie Howe is a very, very talented young coach.
Yeah, it's incredibly tight trying to get into that playoffs, but probably more pressure at the bottom end of the table and the relegation battle, and there's just as many teams fighting relegation as there is going for the top 6.
Well, it is remarkable because there are clubs now who you would have thought, yep, they've just about done enough, that are still very much in it. And when I say that, I'm talking about your Doncaster Rovers, who had a fantastic run just a few weeks ago. Birmingham City, Blackpool, who got off to a record-breaking start to the season and now find themselves third bottom. I think there were many people that probably thought that the 3 that have been down there for the longest, i.e. Yeovil, Barnsley and Millwall, would be the 3 to go. But all of a sudden, Ian Holloway and Millwall, unbeaten in 6 games, winning 3, drawing 3, that has got them out of the relegation zone and put their destiny in their own hands. I mean, the clubs that you are worried about, definitely Yeovil have probably all but gone, it has to be said, in terms of their goal difference, etc. It's going to take a minor miracle. Barnsley, who fought so very, very hard to hang on to the coattails, are another one where they're going to have to win both their last games. So I think Barnsley are probably struggling as well. But from there, the ones that I worry about, Blackpool I saw last Monday, there were all those protests about Carl Oyston, weren't they? Didn't do the players any good, but their recent record is they've had a horrific run, haven't they? 2 wins in 20-odd games. It's sucked them right into that relegation battle. And Birmingham City are another one on the decline. So I'm looking at the 2 clubs on the decline, and they're Birmingham and Blackpool.
I was going to ask you about Blackpool and those demonstrations you mentioned against Carl Oyston, tennis balls on the players. They also had the incident, of course, Bob Malcolm and Stephen Dobbie clashing on the touchline as well. How much does that affect the players?
Well, it can't help them, that's for sure, Matt. You will know it cannot help the players. I mean, they're
what it's
struggling.
like, because I've had things in the past where there's been stuff going on at the boardroom, there's been administrations, etc. And as much as you say, no, it doesn't bother us, as soon as you cross the white line, actually, I think it does.
It does. And, because supporters must realise what an influence they have on football matches, whether that be a positive influence or a negative influence. And there were so many nerves around Blackpool that particular day. Of course, they're playing against second place Burnley, but it's a Lancashire derby. They have to be right up for that. They're in a relegation battle, but Burnley really won it fairly comfortably as far as I was concerned. Although it was only the 1-0, I just felt Burnley were fairly comfortable. I don't think Blackpool got a shot on target until sort of the very last minute of the game, where they had one cleared off the line. And I really feel for Barry Ferguson. He's been thrown in at the deep end. He's been allowed to make a lot of changes, but I'm not really sure the kind of resources that he had to make those changes. I think he brought 10 players in January. But again, as well, Matt, lack of continuity that then becomes, doesn't it, in team selection, in tactics, etc., etc. It's just been a horrible season for Blackpool after a record-breaking start, and I think there have been too many changes at that football club this season, and I think that's why they're in the trouble that they're in.
No doubt about it. It's going to the wire. You've heard Don Goodman's views there, and we'd love to hear from you as well. Tweet us at @football_league, or send us your views and opinions using the hashtag FLRadio. You can also email the show, of course, on radio@football-league.co.uk.
On Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and the Football League website. This is Football League Radio.
Well, at the bottom of League One, it's getting very close indeed now, with just a point separating 4 sides from the final relegation place. That place currently occupied by Notts County, who got a vital 1-0 win over Crawley at the weekend. It leaves them in a decent position to push to safety. And their manager, Sean Derry, was under no illusions of the challenge that he faced when he took the job last year.
I knew coming into Notts County and in the position that we were after 17 games with only 10 points, I knew kind of what I was walking into. But when you experience situations, especially when the results go against you like they have done 2 or 3 times, they make it a little bit more different. Them kind of situations do, yeah. I think I could honestly say I've covered most things in this 5 months that I've started as a manager. It's been all hands to the pump, and all these situations where players come in and speak to you about personal problems, and it's more than just the game, if you know what I mean. It's everything, and when you're a player, you only look at yourself. Players are very much selfish beings and try and work within a team structure. But as a manager, I suppose you've got to look at the team before the individuals, which, that's the overriding difference for me.
In terms of a first job, the situation you went into at Notts County, I doubt there are probably too many more difficult than that.
Yeah, listen, it's difficult. I mean, I'm stood here at the side of the pitch looking at this magnificent stadium that we've got at Notts County, and kind of you look at the infrastructure that's behind it, and it's difficult. It's a difficult football club. It's had a lot of down days in these recent recent years. And I suppose, I don't know, I'm probably guessing out loud here, but I suppose the fans wanted somebody who had that connection with them to try and get it back on the right track. And I'm obviously hoping I'm that right person.
Does it leave you scratching your head a bit, the inconsistency of the team this season?
Oh, massively. That's if there's one word that best describes Notts County, and that's really is inconsistent. I mean, we had a fantastic run over the Christmas and New Year where we picked up a number of points in when the games were coming thick and fast, and then the wheels just completely fell off. And it's took a while to get us back into that focus of believing again, believing that we can actually go out and win games. And it's so tight. I think perhaps give or take Wolves and Brentford, anybody on the day can beat anybody at this level. I mean, it's unbelievable. I've played vast majority of my football in the Championship, and they say that league's tight and kind of inconsistent, but this is a different level altogether. I mean, from one game to the next, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Do you feel more of a personal involvement because you are a Notts County supporter as well?
Yeah, I think so. But what I would say that, whether it was Notts County who gave me my first opportunity or, any of the other football clubs that scattered around the country, I would like to think that I would, give the same regardless of who I'm representing. I surely did as a player for the 8 clubs that I played for. I really tried to delve into not just what's happening on the football field and what's inside the changing room. I like to get to know the people who ran the club, and they're those kind of people that are behind the scenes. They're the kind of people who I kind of struck relationships with as well.
And it's the same down the road as well at Forest, I guess, with Stuart Pearce going in there.
Yeah, I think so. One thing he's going to have is the backing of the fans, just like I have. I mean, for me, since day one, they've been absolutely tremendous. They really have, and I'm not just saying that because I need them. I'm saying it because that's how they've been. They really have been fantastic towards me and Greg. They've really made us feel like they're behind what we're doing, and they understand that there's been, like I said, a lot of bad days here at Notts County, and we're hoping that we can all do it together. It's not going to be me who gets this club back on track. It's going to be the whole community.
Do you think the relegation battle will go to the final game?
I do, yeah. I do, absolutely.
What kind of achievement would it be for you, and where would it stand in the successes in your career if you could keep Notts County up this season? I
don't know. I think, come what May the 3rd when the season's finished, and you're hoping, obviously I'm hoping that we're staying in this league, but this is just the start of my journey. This is something that I've always wanted to do, especially since I've, hit in the latter stages of my career. This seemed to be the natural progression that I was comfortable in going into this environment. So, it's an absolute baptism of fire. Of course it is. I want to succeed, just like I've wanted to succeed as a player or the clubs I've played for. So, I don't want to make it any bigger than what it would be if we do manage to stay in League One. But this is the start of my next chapter of my life, and I don't want it to start on a downside, that's for sure.
That, of course, was Sean Derry, the current Notts County manager, fighting to stay in League One. He comes across as very positive. He talks about the great team spirit, Don. He says he's a glass half full man. He's done a brilliant job, hasn't he?
He's done an excellent job, and what a way to finish the season. They looked down and out, didn't they? But I can tell you, there's only Wolverhampton Wanderers and Swindon Town that have picked up more points in the last 8 games than Notts County, which for a team down at the bottom, I mean, that is absolutely a fantastic achievement, and they've given themselves a wonderful opportunity. And I think the biggest thing of all that they're going to take into their last 2 games is confidence, because confidence comes when you're winning games of football. So what a wonderful job. I mean, he's one of those players that you always felt was destined for management, isn't he? He was a leader on the pitch, and his time at Queen's Park Rangers was excellent, where he captained them into the Premier League.
Yeah, you talk about players there that you feel are destined to get into management. I guess in my playing days, I'd say Eddie Howe, who had injuries, long-term injuries, which gave him the chance to study the game. And you always felt he was very bright and taking in what the managers were telling him. And Tony Mowbray was someone who we used to play cards at the back, messing about on the bus, and he'd be filling in his coaching manuals and working out how we've lost or what we should have done differently. What other players did you think that might have gone into management in your time?
Well, I had more players that I thought might not have gone into management really back in those days when you were playing. There was obviously a different sort of social environment, and it was more the lads that you just thought you could never imagine. I mean, most of the lads that I ended up playing with. A lot of them ended up as assistant managers or coaches at clubs, like Craig Shakespeare at Leicester City and Mike Stowell's with him at Leicester City. David Kelly has been a right-hand man to Billy Davis for a long time. But one of the ones that I didn't think would ever go into management, and that's not because we ever had a conversation about it, was Darren Ferguson. And of course...
Really?
Yeah,
what,
really.
even with his dad?
Even with his dad. I mean, as surprising as that may sound, he was such almost an opposite character in the dressing room and on the pitch and socially as his dad, who was obviously, for all of us throughout the generations, has been a fiery character that's ruled with a real iron rod. So it was a real surprise to me, and of course, what a great job he's done at Peterborough United in 2 spells, it has to be said. He's done a fantastic job, and of course they're almost secure with that 6th and final playoff spot this season.
Well, he's fighting at the right end of the table, but one man who's experienced the sinking feeling this last week has been Stevenage manager Graham Westley. His team, of course, relegated after losing 3-1 to Bristol City on Monday. Delighted to say that Graham joins us now. Graham, that marked the end of 3 years in the division. What are your overriding thoughts?
Well, in all honesty, it's not come as a big surprise to me. I don't think it's come as a big surprise to many at the club. If you go back to last April when I came back from a period out of the game after my demise at Preston, I had a look at the situation. We were 14 defeats in 18. I was pretty clear in what I said to the club, which was that unless we can do an enormous amount of work, we're heading for relegation because the squad was as it was. There were 2-year contracts in place in most cases, and frankly, the quality wasn't there to play League One football. Stevenage is a club. Someone said to me the other day that Sheffield United's youth budget is bigger than Stevenage's first team budget. That's about where the club is at in terms of League One, and we've got to get an enormous amount right in order to survive at League One level and compete at League One level. And frankly, we couldn't do the work. We couldn't bring players in throughout the season. We've been out there getting free and cheap loans. And you know what you get when you're getting free and cheap loans? You get a lot of, exciting talent, but you don't get a lot of experience and know-how. And if you're playing games, without the quality, without the experience and know-how, in the end you can get a little bit better organised. You can push to get the best out of players. But, in the end, we haven't been quite good enough. We've improved. Half a point a game, they were winning last April. And we've won, best part of a point a game this season. So there's improvement, but it just hasn't been enough. So I don't think anybody's surprised at the football club.
Graham, when we've met, I've always found you to be very positive. You sound a little bit down at the moment. How positive can you be after this relegation?
No, I don't think you'll be hearing me down. I think, people might expect, here's this bloke who, keeps talking about, winning things and putting trophies on the tables and creating progress at football clubs. And generally speaking, that's what I've been able to do. Nobody will enjoy, that sinking feeling. I've never experienced relegation or anything like it in my life. And so to suddenly, face that, nobody's going to pretend that they enjoy it. No one's going to enjoy getting rung up by radio shows and being asked about it, because if you're a proud person, a sporting person, a competitive person, of course, it's a humbling experience. But I'm quite philosophical about it, Matt. I know, what it takes to succeed in League One. I know what it took to build Stevenage from a conference club into a top 6 League One club. And it took an enormous amount of hard work. It took some fantastic players willing to learn, willing to have ambition at the top of their agenda, willing to grow, get better every day, fight for each other, real camaraderie, play for their club. And we haven't had that. And, I inherited that to some degree. I can, exonerate myself because I inherited something that wasn't working. I've done my best to encourage and organise what I inherited and make more of it. And I can look at the points per game record and say, well, we are actually winning more points than we were a year ago. But frankly, I know the answers. We need to turn the squad round. And while the contracts were there, we weren't able to do it. We did get some out in the end in January, but we had to replace them with loans and free loans. It's not until next season that the club's going to have a budget where it can start going forward again.
Graham, are you expecting an appropriate amount of support then to be able to make the changes that you feel are necessary from the people at the top of the club?
Well, it's not. Stevenage is never a club that's going to, throw money at any problem. So when I came back and said, look, we've got players who I really do think need to go out the door, it was a question of, well, go on then, find a taker for them. And there weren't too many takers for a lot of the lads. And so I was left with the players that were there, and we were trying to work with them. But frankly, you know yourself, people have either got ambition or they haven't. If you've got people who haven't got that ambition, it's very difficult to instill it in them. So we pushed as much as we could. The contracts now run out, so we're in a situation where we don't have to work with the same squad where the slate's wiped clean to some degree and we can start building afresh, getting in the types that a club like Stevenage needs. I think it's really important that the culture of the club is sustained in the player base and we can put that back together now.
So you're obviously expecting a lot of changes in the summer. Do you not feel that this squad that you've got now currently has got the ability and character to get straight back up?
Well, I think you've seen that, as the season's gone along, we've got to the point where, we're winning just over a point a game. Now, a side that's winning just over a point a game in League One, you only need to look at the top three this year. Recently relegated sides like Chesterfield, like Rochdale, they're sitting Scunthorpe as well. They're sitting in the top three in League Two. So we know that, the poorer sides in League One do have the potential to play at the top end of League Two. I think we've got some work to do to be a top-end League Two side. The plans are there, the knowledge is there to go and build a squad that can operate at the top end. Again, we won't be a big club in League Two, but certainly in terms of knowledge and in terms of ambition, I think we will have what it takes to go down and put ourselves together. But we're under no illusions. There's Torquay lost to us in the League Two playoff final a couple of years ago. They're sitting bottom of League Two. That's no easy league. There's some big clubs in there. So we'll have to get a lot right again, but we've got the room to get it a lot right now that we can clear the decks.
Will you be trying to get some of those funds to spend? As you say, there's major surgery possibly on the horizon in the summer. Will you kind of get some money to spend of your own?
Well, the way the club is set up is that the budget is devised every year on the basis that there will be a certain amount of money created through transfer fees that are received. So the chairman's always planning ahead and thinking about what can be raised. Previously, Michael Bostwick was sold to Peterborough. Obviously, George Boyd, Steve Morrison, Laurie Wilson, all lads that have gone through my hands and have gone on elsewhere. And part of the remit of being the Stevenage manager is that you develop young talent and then you create an opportunity for that talent to go on elsewhere. So, that's the way it is here. And the budget is always set every year, taking a certain amount of that revenue into account.
Graham, you always strike me as a very strong character. What have you learned about yourself this season personally?
I'd like to think that, in difficult times I've maintained my composure. I'd like to think that I've maintained my sense of building for the future. I'd like to think that I haven't got, hung up on things and looked for excuses. I'd like to think that I've been honest through the difficult times, kept people informed, which possibly is why, the supporters in the main have been pretty generous to me with what they've said. I think they understand the picture. And I think that, I've got a burning ambition to succeed. That probably comes through more so now than ever. When times are difficult and you're facing the bottom end of a league and you're not used to it, you've got to be really strong with yourself to be able to see the forward picture and see that, sometimes you probably do have to take a step backwards and you've got to maintain your dignity as you're taking a step backwards so that you give yourself the best possible chance of going forward. So I would like to think of myself as a strong character, and I'd like to think that, the way I've conducted myself during the course of this season and even now is evidence of that.
I read your column in the Football League paper, and quite interestingly, you said you're not a proper manager until you've been relegated. What did you mean by that?
Well, a lot of people say that, and I think when you hear it, you think to yourself, well, Tony Pulis can proudly hold up the fact that he's never got a club relegated. I think what happens when you do actually face up to it is a humbling experience. It's not nice to go and face the music, go and face people who are asking you questions, and you always feel as though people have got that wry smile on their face as they're asking you about your demise. It's one of those human aspects, isn't it, that people kind of do enjoy seeing people who hang themselves up there as being successful. They enjoy to see them have bad times, but I think it's quite a humbling experience when you face a relegation, and it kind of adds a degree of determination that it's never going to happen to you again. And if I look backwards and think, well, could I have avoided it? Was there much I could do when I couldn't change players over? Was there much I could have done? I think what you start doing is you start looking for little 1% differences that you maybe could have made looking backwards, and you start demanding even more of yourself in order to make sure that it never happens again. I think once it's happened, if you add those 1% to make yourself even stronger going forward, you probably become a much better manager. And I think that's probably what I've looked at, is look back, seen what maybe I could have done better, and whether it would have saved us or not, make sure that going forward, I give it even more than I've given it before. Maybe not just in effort terms, but also in the way in which I go about it.
Well, you have seen overseen promotion before with Stevenage. So going forward, what are your ambitions at the club?
Well, I probably didn't make any secret of the fact that when I was at, since I went into football management in the Ryman League, I've managed to become a League One manager because I won promotion from the Ryman League into the conference. I became a Football League manager because I won promotion from the conference into League Two. I became a League One manager because I won promotion from League Two to League One. So I've got 3 promotions under my belt, and I've now obviously got a relegation on my CV as well. So, my ambition from the minute that I started was to go as high as I possibly can. So far, the best I've been able to do is to get a job at Preston and have a really tough 13 months, albeit I'd like to think that the foundations I laid are probably one of the reasons why they are where they are right now. It was losing a lot, Preston, when I went there. I did a lot of clean-up work, a lot of demolition work, and, I felt as I put a really good platform in place at the club, and the evidence is that they built on that platform. I think there were 8 of the lads that I took to the club on the pitch for them at the weekend, and that says that the job I did probably wasn't that bad, albeit 7 were out and results were tough when I left. But my ambition still remains the same. I want to take Stevenage forward again, so that people will look at Graham Westley again and think he's worth a chance somewhere else. And my opportunity to go as far as I can in the game, my ambition to go as far as I can in the game, remains as strong today as it ever has been. Albeit when setbacks happen, you can feel kicked and bruised, but that kicking and that bruising won't stop me from wanting what I want, which is as much progress as I possibly can get.
Graham, really appreciate you joining us. Good luck with the rebuilding job.
Thank you, guys.
Well, that was Graham Westley, the Stevenage manager, and pretty positive despite the fact he's gone down. I've got Don Goodman in the studio with me. Quick nod at this stage of the season. 2 teams, or 3 teams actually, that aren't going anywhere. They're not going down, not going up. Coventry had their 10-point deduction to start the season, and they look safe now. Bristol City, under Steve Cottrell, the turnaround they've had, and also Sheffield United, Nigel Clough, the jobs that those 3 have done.
Yeah, phenomenal. And I think in Nigel's case and Steve Cottrell, they'll just be maybe a tad disappointed that they couldn't start their good runs that fraction earlier, because if they had done, they may well have been in with a shout when you look at the form that those clubs are in of snatching a playoff spot. But no, they all 3 clubs. I mean, Stephen Pressley at Coventry. You know what? It looked like it was going to be a miracle, didn't it? Because for large parts of the season, they were very, very, very impressive, and they clawed back that 10-point deficit quick as you like, and actually put themselves in a playoff challenging position. Of course, they couldn't see the job through, and financial position, they had to sell Leon Clark to Wolves, and so on and so forth. So Stephen Pressley's done a magnificent job as well, and he needs to be congratulated along with the other 2 lads.
That's the views there of former Bradford and Wolves striker Don Goodman, who's with me in the studio. And you're listening to the Football League Radio, brought to you by TradePoint. If you want to see and hear more from your Football League club, then why not check out their YouTube page, where you'll find exclusive interviews, match highlights, and plenty more.
Kick it.
TradePoint, TradePoint. Come on, lads, get the man. TradePoint, TradePoint, TradePoint. One stop, get the lot. TradePoint.
TradePoint have thousands of lines behind the counter, so you can get everything you need to get the job done in no time. TradePoint. Trade brands, trade prices, trade only.
TradePoint.
Well, let's now have a quick look around League Two with Don Goodman. Don, it's extremely tight at that bottom end of the table. It's probably where the biggest story is about who's going to stay in the league and who's going to fall out, sadly.
Well, of course, people talk about pressure in football, Matt, don't they? And I've had it at both ends of the table, and I can assure everybody out there that the pressure is compounded massively when you're fighting relegation. And what makes this relegation scrap even more pressurised, if you like, is the fact that these boys are fighting for their Football League status right down at the bottom of League Two, and it is just one almighty battle, because the likes of Northampton have gone on a really good run, and that has brought a few clubs that may have thought that they were safe just 2 or 3 weeks ago back into the fray, and obviously it's looking very, very difficult for Wycombe, Bristol and Northampton.
Well, I know you were up in the northeast recently. Spoke to Colin Cooper, the Hartlepool manager. They needed a win, didn't they? Just about got one against Morecambe.
Yeah, it was huge. It really was. I know that they were very, very concerned, because they are a club that started the season off terribly and then got it going in the middle of the season, and everybody felt that they may be in with an outside chance of a playoff push, and then it all went horribly wrong. They had that terrible losing run, 6 on the bounce, which just left them sort of on 49 points, and they all felt up on Thursday evening, Colin Cooper and the many Hartlepool United supporters that I was talking to, that they just needed that one more win, and they got it. And I'm sure there's an awful lot of relief up there because that was a huge win.
Yeah, indeed. And what about, I've got to say, Portsmouth, the run that they're on, one of my favourite grounds. Used to love going to Portsmouth. The fans are absolutely fantastic, the noise they make. Won 5 on the spin. They left it too late to get in the playoffs, but what a run they're on.
It's incredible, and I guess the question is, where did that come from? 5 wins on the trot at this time of the season it's just a fantastic run, and there will be a tinge or a hint of sadness, although I'm sure, given just a few short games ago where they were in the table, looking exposed as if they might go out of the Football League or certainly be involved in that battle that we've just spoke about, I think there'll be a lot of relief around Portsmouth and maybe a lot of optimism for next season.
Portsmouth absolutely flying in League Two under Andy Orford. He's won those 5 games in temporary charge. But let's see now how one of his predecessors in the Pompey hot seat got on when we asked Guy Whittingham to take our quickfire quiz.
Guy Whittingham, tackle these. You famously became a professional footballer after leaving the army. In your time playing, 2 others have followed your path from army to league football. Can you name them?
Mikey Taylor and Lee Bradbury.
Perfect, spot on. In 1992-93, you set a record for the most league goals scored in a single season in a Portsmouth shirt. Can you remember how many?
Well, if it's league goals, it's 42. If it's all together, it's 47.
That season, you were named in the PFA's First Division Team of the Year, along with another player who is a current Football League manager. Who is it?
Not a Portsmouth player?
No.
No, you'll have to...
Lee Clark, then at Newcastle,
right,
now,
okay.
of course, at Birmingham City. Despite your accolades and goal scoring, you were beaten to the Portsmouth Player of the Year season award. Who won it instead?
It was a disgrace. Should never be allowed.
And it was?
A long-haired git. Paul Walsh.
Of course, Paul Walsh. You're one of a select group to have been named Portsmouth Player of the Year and also managed the club. Who are the others, including spells as caretaker?
Who else have been made manager? No, you've got me on that one. I don't know that one at all.
Andy Orford, Player of the Year 1998, caretaker manager.
Yeah, after me, yeah.
Steve Claridge, Player of the Year 99,
yes.
Manager.
Oh,
2000.
you know what? I had a real blank there, didn't I? Because I was actually, Tony Pulis was the manager, and I went out on loan to Oxford United, and Steve Claridge took over, and I had to cut my loan short at Oxford United to come back and be his assistant. How stupid am I?
During your career, you were denied an FA Cup final appearance twice by Liverpool, once at Portsmouth in '92 and once for Wickham in 2001. On both occasions, your team scored once. Who got the goals?
Darren Anderton was a Portsmouth goal.
Yeah.
I can see him. I can see the Wickham one. Tall midfield player. No, go on.
Keith Ryan.
Ryan, that's it. That was rubbish then.
That's right. Honestly.
I've got the ones right on myself. That was about it.
Well, thanks to Guy Whittingham for taking our quiz there. I don't think he's going to go to the top of our leaderboard. Don Goodman with me in the studio. What fixtures you got coming up?
Well, I'm down in Brighton on Friday night. Brighton against Yeovil, of course, both needing to win for very different reasons, so that's fantastic. And then I'm going to have to find out after the weekend's results where Sky Sports are going to send me for the very final game of the season. I'm sure wherever it is, there'll be something very, very important at one end of the table or another riding on it. So yeah, it's a great time of the season where lots of nerves, lots of tension and lots of excitement for some.
Don, enjoy your trip to the seaside on Friday.
I will do, Matt.
Thanks
Been
for joining me.
Thanks, mate.
My guest this week on Football League Radio, brought to you by TradePoint, has of course been former Wolves and West Brom striker Don Goodman. Remember, the show's available to listen to on the Football League website, iTunes, SoundCloud, the TuneIn and Stitcher mobile phone apps, on YouTube and on Audio Boo. I'll be back next week and I'll be joined in the studio by a very special guest, former teammate and Charlton manager Chrissy Powell.
Football League Radio, in association with TradePoint, is an engaged sports media production for the Football League.